Hey y'all, I'm Jeremy Watson. I'm product manager here at GitLab, and I'm joined here by Harris and Matt for the import and compliance groups, respectively, talking about what's ahead for the managed stage in 13.6, releasing November 22nd, 2020. First up is going to be Matt talking a little bit about what's ahead for the compliance group. Matt, take it away, sir.
Cool. Thanks, Jeremy. So in this particular release, I would say half of our capacity is still taken up by important necessary work, such as continuing the refactoring of audit events and some underlying improvements that aren't necessarily customer facing, but will improve the overall experience of GitLab. So that's one bucket. But the other bucket that's user facing is things like, realize I'm not sharing my screen, uh, adding a revoke button to the personal access token tab of the credential inventory. So we're continuing to iterate on the credential inventory to continue building that out, which will consist of adding additional credentials, but as well as more functionality. And so this is one of the ways in which we're bringing the convenience of providing more flexible solutions for credential management to GitLab. So how that'll manifest will look like this, similar to the delete button for SSH keys that I believe shipped in 13.5, but in this case, you can only revoke a personal access token, and so we'll be doing that. We'll also be adding a quality of life improvement for when an SSH key is deleted or a personal access token is revoked by generating an email to the user affected. So if I'm a user and I have my personal access token revoked because it exceeds the company's credential rotation policy, rather than having that programmatic enforcement, which is really disruptive, the admins have the ability to optionally revoke it at some point in time. And so when that gets revoked, I'll be notified so that I can then go and generate a new one so that I'm not just left wondering why something is not working. The other feature we're working on, which I'm most excited about, is the ability to generate a commit SHA specific chain of custody report. So I think it was 2 releases ago, we released an MVC for a list of commits, which was our first foray into this chain of custody. And so some of the feedback we received was, that's great, but oftentimes I have a commit SHA that I know is problematic or that I want to investigate. And so it'd be great if you could show me everything related to that. And so we're starting to lay the groundwork by adding this capability. So that way you provide the commit SHA and it'll show you all of the related other resources or objects like pipelines, merge requests, and eventually things like Jira tickets and such. So trying to give users the ability to specify or refine the reports that we generate so they don't have to generate a big chunk of data and then have to sort through that themselves. And then the last thing of note is bringing an export of merge requests as CSV to the UI. So similar to the capability available for exporting issues, you'll be able to export merge requests. And this is all part of the theme of making it easier to get data out of GitLab. So because our customers regularly tell us that they're trying to get the data out of GitLab to put into other systems of record, or even just to generate as an evidence artifact of some sort. So these are the ones I'm most excited about, and hopefully our community will feel the same.
That's very cool, especially like the chain of custody report. I think that's going to be a very exciting addition. Um, could you please just like voice over really briefly our tiering strategy for the credential inventory? I know that the two of us have been talking about it a little bit here and there, but the conversation has been around the credential inventory, revocation. Like, what should our tiering thinking be there? Do you mind just voicing over that super quick?
Yeah, you bet. So the last conversation we had and where I feel most comfortable with it is the premise that we can make available and should make available these features such as listing and revoking personal access tokens for admins. So an admin can list and revoke the paths of their users. Like things like that, API functionality that they can go build their own solution, I think makes sense at a minimum in a lower tier like premium, but I would be supportive of having that in core because I think one of the strong arguments made for that was it helps our users and our customers just have a stronger information security posture by default. And so for the credential inventory, I'm advocating to keep that in Ultimate, because I think that as long as we provide the tools for our customers to build their own solutions, then where we can add value in Ultimate is by doing that heavy lift for them. So we will give them the ability in Ultimate to set an expiration policy, to determine if they want to enforce that in a programmatic way or have some flexibility there for orgs that have said they want softer enforcement. Providing things like these revoke or delete buttons to do a one-click action to be able to act on rotations. But we're also considering things like adding support for, IP allow listing. The access group, Melissa, has done a great job with releasing project scoped access tokens. And I believe group scoped access tokens are following, which gives us the ability to bring this functionality, this credential inventory, to the group level for .com customers as well. And so having that convenience, having that automation, having that ability to really build out a flexible credential management policy in GitLab and have us do that work for you, I think is why it makes sense in Ultimate.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that we were talking originally about having certain types of credentials, like in Ultimate and others. I think that's a much cleaner kind of like approach. I really like the attitude that, if you have for giving them the individual tools, like it's something that's available in lower tier. I agree with your kind of thinking that it's a security based kind of like capability, and maybe it belongs in core versus premium to that effect. I would kind of support that, but I think that it makes sense that if you're going with kind of like automation at scale, that's something that like I think belongs in Ultimate, and it's a lot cleaner of an approach than like certain credentials are and certain credentials aren't. That's probably a really frustrating model for customers who are trying to make a just buying decision. So that sounds
Yeah.
great. The other thing was like I really like the quality of life improvement with like their revocation email notice. But my question is like, I anticipate we'll hear some desire to like show an error in the CLI, so that if a developer is like trying to do a push using an old PAT, that it won't just reject it. It'll say like, oh, by the way, this was actually like rotated out because of organizational policy. Go and create a new PAT. Do you think that would be helpful? Like, I'm happy to create that issue if you think that that'd be worthwhile.
Yeah, I think it would be. And in fact, it's part of the thinking. Like, I don't think we have an issue for it, but it's on my mind because one of our enterprise, I think they were a prospect, but they mentioned like, hey, what we would like to do is X, Y, and Z, but that was one of the things. They would like to build in sort of like this delayed revocation where, I think the example they gave was on the first use of the token after it expires, give them a warning that says, hey, this will not work on the next push or whatever event. Um, but even they conceded that that could be a little bit tricky in terms of still being disruptive. So I think what you're proposing makes sense. I think we should add some version of a CLI message regardless of what the enforcement mechanism looks like. But in the long term, I'd love to be able to get to a point where they can just kind of customize exactly what that workflow looks like for their users.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks a lot, man. Harris, over to you. I think you have a comment
Yeah,
here, and then
I have a
also,
quick comment. I just
yeah.
wanted to welcome Matt to the export-import world, and thank you for adding the the exporter for MRs, exporter to CSV. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Here, here.
Yeah. If there's no more questions, I will continue next, talking about import and what we're planning in 13.6. In 13.6, we plan to continue the work on the GitLab group migration MVC. In 13.5, we have added the front-end and the back-end framework to support this feature. And now we're gonna have to just iterate toward making the feature more complete and providing more depth to the feature until it's useful and in the end replaces the existing file-based export-import by implementing that one-click migration experience that I've talked about before. That one click will include the group, all the subgroups, and all the projects and all the objects that that we can see under that. Let me share my screen to talk about the user experience. So in addition to completing the MVC, which is currently in progress, the very next thing that we're going to do to provide more depth to the feature and more usefulness is add epics to the group that's being migrated. So all the epics that belong to the group will be migrated as well. And we also want to work on the user experience. We've just added some basic user experience now, but I'm gonna show off the user experience that we would like to have at the end of 13.6. So as we create the new group, we will have the ability to import groups. And currently we can do the from file. What we're gonna be doing is adding the ability to import group from another instance of GitLab. So providing the credentials, the URL and the credentials to that instance will connect to the instance and show you all the top level groups that you have visibility into, and let you decide which one of those groups you would like to go ahead and import into your current instance. So this experience is very similar to what we have on projects. This is still kind of just the first out. We are looking to refine issues that will add, more standard interactions that we normally have on other views, such as the ability to filter and search for the group that you're looking for in case that there are more groups than can fit on in a view. So finally, when the import is completed, the group name will turn into a link and allow you to go visit the new group that you just created. So that is pretty much the goal for 13.6. In addition to, so the team will be swarming around this. So we are going to aim to deliver one large feature as opposed to several small ones. That said, we always do have other goals and other and bugs, security issues that we typically take care of, escalations. So we are planning, in addition to delivering this one feature, to still have some bandwidth to take care of kind of the incoming bugs, escalations, and security issues. So that is the goal for the import team for 13.6. I think, Jeremy, you might have a question about what I just said.
Yeah, I was just curious, when you say the goal is, importing and adding epics to the group migration, when you say what is included in that? Because, you have an epic description, you have a number of like sub epics potentially, and then issues that are associated with the epic. So what do you anticipate kind of like is going to be included in that?
So since we are not migrating issues or any other objects, what I expect in 13.6 is the ability to get the epic with all of the kind of first level attributes, but no relationships. So we wouldn't have relationships to users or the issues, because the only thing that we will have after this is just epics. But I do expect all of the attributes that are normally associated with epics to be there.
Are you concerned that a customer might use the import capability and then find themselves in like a weird partial state? They're like, oh, I have 100 epics. Let me try this importer capability. And then it doesn't import any of their issues. And they're kind of like, well, I have this epics, all my epics, but now I have to, I don't know, script or manually associate all the issues with the epics now. Are you kind of concerned about that?
Definitely, and that's a kind of a bug and a feature at the same time. So we are going to communicate clearly what will be migrated as part of this migration, and we'll be evolving that documentation that we're going to provide in the view as well. But we would actually like for people to give us feedback and tell us what are the next things and what are the big things that are missing and what we should work on next. So this is one of those features that we're just going to put something small out there and let the users tell us where we need to take it next.
That's totally fine. I think that makes sense for something this complex. Consider either like wrapping that in a feature flag or possibly flagging it as like a beta or an alpha, so that this is like, you might get some unexpected results from this, but this is something that we want to share feedback on.
Yeah, we do have a feature flag, but I think it's a great idea to have a beta label or have some kind of a label. I don't know if we have a pattern for that in UX, but if not, this would be a great time to just create one and have a little badge that explains that this is a feature in development and gives you the, maybe even gives you details there on what are all the things that are being migrated and sort of give you a warning that you use this, but it's not complete. I like that.
Yeah, I would maybe call it a beta, and we have a handbook page on this right here, which explains alpha, beta, and generally available. So alpha, not ready for production use, data loss can occur. Beta, not ready for production use, unstable, feature and functions unlikely to change, data loss not likely. Might be that, might be like, because data loss seems unlikely, but you might get some unpredictable results from it, and the features are unlikely to change themselves. So I
Yeah.
don't know. But
yeah, I don't think that we are at risk of losing data or having production issues or even have performance issues. I think it's really all about just disappointing people by not migrating enough and it not be viable in a way or useful enough for anyone to really use it. So I think for that reason, I might still just call it beta in order to call out the fact, because then people will click through potentially and may get informed better about what's really in there.
Yeah,
so
totally.
I like that. And we're going to keep that on for a while because, until we're ready to, say that we're going to replace some use cases and there's actual customers who would use this instead of the old file-based system, I think I'm going to keep the beta tag on it.
Makes total sense. The other question was, do you think that there's is this going to largely work the same for self-managed and GitLab.com, you think?
Yeah, so this feature has been designed from the get-go to be able to, we're just hitting an API. So from any instance that can hit some other instance API, we will be able to pull data across. So that could be from GitLab to self-managed, from self-managed to GitLab, self-managed to self-managed in a way. We're not advertising this, but in theory, you should be able to pull a group across from GitLab to GitLab.
Cool, awesome.
I don't see how that's useful to know. So if anyone knows how that might be useful, let me know, because I am not advertising that fact, because it might just confuse people if I start to explain that.
Right.
But it will just work because of the way it's been designed.
Cool, sounds good. Thanks for sharing the designs. It's such a huge step forward.
Thank you.
Cool. I'm going to turn off recording. Thanks y'all so much for a great kickoff. I'm excited for 13.6.